Podcast continues to roll on, and we appreciate you checking us out on the CHCH and Parrot media platforms. I'm Bubba O'Neil. As you know, Southern Ontario, and in particular the Golden Horseshoe, is a gold medal winner for outstanding athletes, coaches, executives, media members, and teams like the Hamilton Ticats, who are hot, hot, hot. Now, with that in mind, when it comes to talking about the Canadian Football League, I'm not sure that we've had a guest that's this accomplished. Coming out of Simon Fraser University, this individual was a one-team kind of guy, playing 11 seasons, all with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and he never missed a game. In the secondary, Glen Suitor was outstanding as a three-time CFL and four-time Western All-Star. In addition, he was a part of that Riders 1989 Grey Cup winning squad. But with all due respect to his playing career, he adapted those skills to the broadcast booth, and for the last 30 years, he's been considered TSN's top in-game analyst. As he prepares for this evening's contest between the Stampeders and Alouettes in Calgary, let's bring in the main man, Mr. Glen Suitor. Glad to have you, partner.
Bubba, thanks for having me. When I look at that intro, I think, man, I'm getting old.
Well, you still got the best head of hair, like better than mine, for crying out loud.
Well, that's my wife's doing. She just takes care of all that kind of stuff. She said, you got to use this stuff and this lotion and whatever. I don't know.
Well, you're looking good, my man. Hey, again, thanks for joining us. And I want to talk Canadian Football League. I'm so just jammed up and excited about this season. I mean, I'm going to start with one of the teams that you're covering tonight, the Calgary Stampeders, who really, about 6 months ago, castigated, made fun of. The food that they were serving the players was all wrong. Dave Dickinson needs to be whacked. And here we are. They're 5-1. What has gotten into the Calgary Stampeders?
Well, I think to sort of sum it up, Bubba, I would say that team and their coaching staff believe in their quarterback, in Vernon Adams, and their quarterback believes in their defense. And I think that combination is the winning formula. When you believe that your defense can not only make the stops necessary if you make a mistake as a quarterback, but can also score, it just gives you a lot more sort of freedom to not worry too much about pushing the ball deep or taking shots when you got a one-on-one matchup you like, throwing it like you're seeing on the podcast now, on the highlights, when you're scrambling and, on the run and just letting it go. Because, as a quarterback, and I talked to Vernon Adams about this heading into this week's games, and he basically said that, it's so reassuring to know that our defense, even if I make a mistake, they'll just shut the door and get us the ball back. So this is a defense that doesn't have a lot of big names. It has a couple, but not a lot of big names. And it's almost as if, Bubba, that someone needs to tell all these young guys on defense in Calgary that they're not supposed to be this good this early in your career. You're supposed to take some time, 3 or 4 years before you actually figure it out. But they're on a roll, and they found the caramel secret when it comes to knocking off the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, because they've beaten them twice now, including once in Winnipeg. And I going into the season, I think everyone had them as the top team in the West, the Bombers.
Are you surprised, as you bring up the Bombers there, that you look at what Calgary has done? I think it's over a 3-game span in beating Winnipeg twice, going into Regina and taking care of them. You've really flexed your muscles there. Now, the only thing is we're only 6 games into the season, and I think that has to be sort of respected.
Yeah, well, there's no question. I mean, this is the first third, and it's fun to speculate. It's fun to look at. I think the season for most teams and coaches is broken up into thirds. And the first third, you find out kind of who you are, what you're made of. You find out what you need to improve upon. And then in the middle third, you start to position yourself. Can we beat the best teams? Are we in the conversation with the best teams in the league? I think after the first third, Calgary certainly can say that. The team they're playing tonight can certainly say that in the Montreal Alouettes. So, in the other division. So, I think you break it into thirds, and then that final third is the run for a home field game or the bye into the final. And, you break it up into those sections. There's a long way to go and a lot can happen. But right now, we're seeing some uncharacteristic things in this. Well, I shouldn't say uncharacteristic. We're seeing a surge in defensive scoring. I think there's been 11 defensive touchdowns in the first third of the season. We're seeing the big returns, punt returns, all sort of great characteristics of our game, because I think there's been 7 or 8 kick return touchdowns in the first third of the season. So defenses at times, including this Calgary defense, not only stopping people, but they're turning, they're scoring. They're scoring on D.
So if people are surprised about seeing the Calgary Stampeders leading the way in the West, there may be some that are a little surprised to see the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who have been perennial slow starters over, with the exception of the 2019 15-3 season. They just have been slow starters. At this point last year, they had just come off their first win, which was against the Argonauts, to make them 1-5. Right now, they're 4-2, and by a couple of tiebreakers, lead the East Division. And I think when you start to talk about this team, it's all about number 19 to 89. How impressed are you with Kenny Lawler?
Yeah, well, if I were to, again, it's early in the season, Bubba, but if I were to sort of list my MOP candidates right now, I think Lawler and Bo would both be on the list. And, you know, it reminds me back in the days when in Calgary, Doug Flutie was playing with Alan Pitts, and Pitts was looking at, you know, on pace to break touchdown records like Kenny Lawler is when it comes to Milt Steagle's touchdown record. So, you know, when you see the connection that is almost impossible to stop at this point, you know, I think, yeah, you can put them both on the early list as MOP candidates. And who do you give that nod to? The quarterback throwing it or the guy catching it at the other end? Because, wow, it's not just been catches by Lawler, it's been spectacular catches. He's definitely the most spectacular player in the league after a third. But this defense is playing well. You know, I see the defense starting to get more and more takeaways as the season goes on. And I talked to Scott Milanovic after they started, and it was after a loss. And, you know, the confidence that he had in this team, you know, just sort of came out without even asking. You know, I didn't have to ask, but I could see the confidence that he still had. He knew what he had. He knew that Bo had, you know, finally become completely healthy and had a great grasp of what they were trying to do. So they were working in collaboration. And I think that has all come together nicely for Hamilton. If teams get very radical defensively to stop Lawler or to try and stop Lawler, there's other weapons out there, and that'll, you know, create one-on-ones for different players. So, you know, there's only so much you can do when you're double teaming and things like that on one receiver. And if they try to do that, Bo has other weapons.
You said a couple of names there and things that made me think about what Lawler has done. And sometimes I get a little bothered by the on pace sort of phrase that we use in sports very often. But I mean, there is an argument to be talked about if Milt Steagle on the TSN desk is shaking in his boots, and he has said it straight out. I don't want my records to be broken. And that's 23 touchdowns in a season. And of course, if he's on pace right now, Lawler would break that record. You roam the secondary for over a decade. How would you cover him, or is he just basically uncoverable?
Well, I'll make the Pitts analogy again, because I played against Alan Pitts, and we had this dilemma playing against Doug Flutie and Alan Pitts together. We knew in certain situations, especially inside the 20-yard line, that Pitts would be the primary target, and Kenny Lawler is definitely that when it comes to Bo Levi Mitchell. And I would be in the huddle with guys like Richie Hall as a defensive back teammate, and I'd say, okay, I'm going to, from the safety spot, slide over and help you on Alan Pitts. Now, Pitts was a slot back, so it was a little easier to get double teams from either a linebacker or a safety than it does when you have a wide receiver, but you can still do it. And you know, or help over the top, and you can play press coverage underneath with help over the top. And we would do it. We would call it in the huddle. We would actually say, Bubba, they're throwing this ball to Alan Pitts, no doubt. And we double teamed him. We were right there, and somehow he made the catch anyway. So that can be completely demoralizing to a team when you call the play in the huddle defensively that they're going to run, and then you get out there, they run exactly what you said they were going to run, and you can't stop them. The other example of that was Mike Pringle when we knew he was going to run, and we couldn't stop him at times either. But, I think Lawler is in that category. I really do. I think you could double team him, sure. But, if Bo still decides to go run that fade route or that corner route, he can elevate, pull the ball down in a double team. We've seen it so many times that, he's just having a great year, and their chemistry is fun to watch.
Tiger Cats are coming off back-to-back victories over the Ottawa Red Blacks, who right now, their season, I think a perfect time for the bye week for them to kind of sort out where they're going to go in the future at 1-6 right now. But going back to the last week's game where we had Drew Brown injured from the game on a hit, what was, some say, and I'll just go as far as saying the head coach of the Red Blacks said that Deshaun Amos should have been kicked out of the game. 25-yard penalty was assessed to the wide receiver. To Amos at the point. Kind of your thoughts on the hit. We are looking to protect quarterbacks. I think that's first and foremost. But from your perspective, again, because you played that position, I'd love to know your opinions.
Well, first of all, the simple answer is that we have to try and get those hits out of the game, whether it's a quarterback or another defenseless player. I mean, when a quarterback is in the pocket and trying to throw, that's about as defenseless as you can become as a football player on the field at any time, because he doesn't see it coming off the edge. He's looking downfield. There's certain mechanics that are necessary to throw the football that leave you vulnerable. And this is what they're trying to remove from the game. And Deshaun Amos led with the crown of his helmet, and that is crossing the line. Now, when they decide on supplemental discipline, and this is where it gets a little trickier, past precedent becomes part of the conversation. And it should. I mean, if a player has a history of these kind of hits, then the punishment becomes much stronger than if it's a first-time thing. And, I think for Amos, it was completely, a first-time thing. I don't remember ever talking about him. He's certainly not a dirty player. I don't remember him ever being in this situation before where he's been looking at supplemental discipline. So it's a bit of a tough one, Bubba, in that we want that hit out of the game, leading with the crown of your helmet, hitting the quarterback in the chin. I mean, we got to get that hit out of the game. So you have to be strong enough in supplemental discipline to send that message to other players that if this is a minimum kind of fine situation, then players go, well, if we can knock the starter out of the game and all I get is a minimum fine, well, heck, that's almost worth it. And I know that sounds bad to think that way, but I guarantee you there are players that think that way. So you have to, as a commissioner, and this is one of the challenges, the new challenge that Stuart Johnson is going to face, is, decisions to be made on hits like this. So I don't know, maybe a suspension, maybe a full, the maximum fine possible, to send a strong message that we can't have this hit in the game. You can't lead with the crown of your helmet, the top of your helmet, and you can't hit the quarterback above the neck or above or near below. So target properly, hit properly with your shoulder, or you're going to get a stiff penalty. So that's the league dilemma. I know that doesn't really take a hard stand one way or another, but past precedent does come into this, Bubba, and he has none. There is no history here for Deshaun Amos. So I think a max fine. I'm not even sure if the league may have by now announced it. I haven't double checked as to what they're going to do there.
Well, I mean, it cost his team 25 yards, too, at that time, which was a crucial point of the game. I mean, again, Suits, I had to rely on the fact that you played the position, and I know that when you played, it was a different time, right? But, yeah. I mean, and that quarterback safety has become a major topic of discussion at this point right now. But I look at a shot like that was delivered on Zach Collaros, which he said to the media he believed was late. We call it the strike zone at this point right now. It's got to be really hard to play defense nowadays.
Yeah, it is. But, the difference between this hit and the Amos hit is that Hicks here leads with his shoulder. He takes his head out of the hit. And, that's a safety issue for the defensive player, too. The guy that's doing the hitting is to not bow your head or duck your head and hit with the top of your helmet. You can hurt your neck that way. So you want to get your head out of the hit. That's what they're trying to teach. And then the only thing with the Zach question was it late? Was it a step late? And I think when you go back and look at that, the league will look at it and say, could Hicks have avoided this hit as he comes through and the ball just leaves Zach's hands? Could he have avoided and redirected himself in time? Now, we watched it there a couple of times on the podcast in slow motion. And slow motion can be very deceptive when it comes to guessing or figuring out the timing of a hit. So again, I think they're very different hits. One, we definitely want to take out for a couple of reasons. Target was wrong. Leading with your head was wrong. This one was just a timing issue. I don't know. I was okay with the way they called it on the field at the time with Hicks.
Let's move on to another team that has me a little confused. A lot was expected from the Edmonton Elks this year, coming off of what they did last season, kind of a positive finish to their season. And this week they're 1-4, and they get the 5-1 Saskatchewan Roughriders. And there seems to be a lot of rumbling about the quarterbacking situation for the Edmonton Elks right now, where Trey Ford, the younger quarterback, was supposed to be the man. And I thought there was a feeling that last year there was too much herky-jerky about who was going to start, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, Trey Ford, and that Trey Ford couldn't really settle in. So here he is right now, and he did not play well last week against BC. And there's talk about Cody Fajardo coming in, experienced backup, won a Grey Cup a couple of years ago with Montreal, that he should be the starter. Your thoughts on where Trey Ford is right now in terms of a quarterback in the Canadian Football League? And do they got to make a move?
Yeah, there's two parts to this, and it's been an interesting discussion all week long across the country about Trey Ford and Cody Fajardo. And let's just first talk about Trey and his development or where he's at. I thought for the first 4 games of the season, he was getting better every game, and his accuracy was there. We know what he can do with his legs. I thought he maybe didn't do that enough in the first 5 games, but he was progressing nicely. And then they played Ottawa 2 games ago and had predetermined that they were going to bring Cody Fajardo in at a couple of different times in the game. So no matter how that game was unfolding, Fajardo was going to play. So now, as it turned out, Trey Ford was 8 for 8 and was seeing the field nicely and really playing well, and they brought Fajardo in. Now, I'm not a big fan of that at the best of times, but some coaches like it, and some analysts think it's a good idea at times. So, to each his own. But Trey was 8 for 8 at that time and was seeing the field very well, and I thought progressing, and this looked like a game that he was going to take a major step in his sort of evolution. And they made these changes, and it really slowed the momentum, in my opinion. The next week, Trey Ford was struggling. He was, I used the analogy at the end, and he's going to be mad at me for this, but it was that old saying that he couldn't hit the ocean from standing in a boat. And, he was struggling. I mean, he was missing throws, just flat out open receivers that he was missing. And Mark Killam didn't make the change at quarterback until the fourth quarter, till deep into the fourth quarter, where he brought in Fajardo. So here's the confusing part. So this week they go 50-50 reps. I think they probably make the change. And start Cody. I don't know if they've announced that officially yet. It'll be any day now or any minute now that they announce that. But they were 50-50 in reps, and it's almost like an open tryout now. So this is what I don't get, Bubba, because I keep hearing when we talk about quarterbacks like this that the coach will send a message, and it might be the wrong message if he starts a guy and then pulls him early, or if he starts the other guy and leaves him in there too long, that it sends the wrong message. And I go, what is all this messaging thing that goes on with quarterbacks? Why are we so afraid of their fragile confidence? These guys are grown men. They understand what's going on. If I'm Killam, I walk into that room with both quarterbacks and I say, guys, Trey Ford, you're our starter, period. And this was at the beginning of the week. You're our starter, period. That's it. We've made that commitment. We believe in you. You're our starter. However, you didn't have your best stuff last week against BC. And if that happens again, we're pulling you early. Okay, so understand that. We've got a veteran quarterback behind you who is a champion, who has won a championship as a starter. That's why we brought him in. So like a starting pitcher in baseball, if you don't have your best stuff, we're going to the reliever, and we're going to go to him early. So, we don't want you to pout about that, and we don't want Cody to pout about not getting in. And they won't. They're grown men and they're pros, and they know how this works, and they got to win a game. So I don't know why there's so much tippy-toeing and dropping breadcrumbs, and this message could be the wrong message. And just go and tell them, Trey Ford, you're our starter. You're going to keep starting until, we tell you differently down the road. But right now, you're our starting quarterback. We're going to start with you again, but we're going to go to the bullpen if you're not seeing it like you didn't see it against the BC Lions a week ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever that was. So I don't know, Bubba. My guess is, I don't know if it's been official yet. I'm just going through my notifications quickly, but my guess is they start Cody. And now they've got this juggling act going on like they had last year. So what if Cody doesn't play well today, or the team doesn't play well, even if it's not Cody and they lose again today? Now what? You go back and forth? I don't know. I think you have your ace pitcher. You're going with your ace pitcher every chance you get. If he doesn't have his good stuff, you're going to the bullpen. And that could be the same in football, and I don't get why we're so sensitive about all this stuff.
Is there something to be said? I mean, Trey Ford's he's not Bo Levi Mitchell. He's not your stereotypical sort of drop back passer guy, McLeod Bethel Thompson. When I think of quarterbacks like that, they have a certain skill set and they want to upfield the football. Gunslingers, we call them. Right. Trey's not that kind of guy. Use the words athletic. I think Nathan Rourke is a kind of guy that's more of a drop back passer with mobility. And Jordan Maksimic seems to be running an offense, and I'm talking about the offensive coordinator of the Elks, that I think is a little bit more similar to upfielding the football, a vertical passing game with some movement. I don't know. At some point, do you have to change your offensive game plan to suit the athlete, or does the athlete just have to settle into what the game plan is going to be?
Yeah, it's a great question because, some coaches will say, here's what I do. And that's why I've been hired. And we need the athlete. We need to go and recruit or sign the athlete that will fit into that system. And the opposite can be said too. Let's wait till we see what our team looks like, and let's get the best football players we can. And then after that, we'll start to build our offense or our defense around the athletes we have to put them in their best opportunity. And, I would agree when it comes to Trey. Trey is unique enough and different enough than your normal, drop, even athletic, even the Nathan Rourke type of quarterback who's athletic, but is a pocket passer, really. I mean, Vernon Adams is also in that category. He can get out and run and beat you with his legs, but he would prefer to throw from the pocket, and he would prefer to scramble to throw. Whereas Trey, I think you can build an offense around him that he doesn't scramble to throw. He scrambles to run. He scrambles to break down the defense with his legs. He runs the RPOs to death, those run-pass option plays where he's got Justin Rankin, where he fakes it or gives it to him, and depending on what the defensive end does, and pulls it if the end crashes. And the reason for that is that you have to widen the defense. And when you have Trey Ford in your backfield, you have to widen your defense to keep him contained. If he gets outside, it's over. You're in trouble defensively. So you have to keep widening, and that opens the inside run lanes. I think at the end of last year, we got a great example of what was possible. Now, Jordan Maximic wasn't there last year, but we got a great example of what was possible when they did have that combination of Trey running and Rankin running, and sometimes Javon Leake was mixed into that as well. So I thought, they basically almost led the league, I believe, rushing the football per game. It was upwards of almost 200 yards a game, and it was tough to defend against them. And now this offense is different. So I'm with you, Bubba. I think, if they're going to now decide that Cody Fajardo is their guy, then Fajardo is more suited for what they've done offensively in the first half. But if they're going to go back to Trey, maybe not even this game, but beyond, then an offense that better suits his athletic abilities. He's such a different cat, different unicorn. Like, he really is. I mean, I've never seen a guy be able to make people miss like him at that position. And that includes Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie was a great runner, but he wasn't like Trey. That's a different beast. And I'm not sure they've taken full advantage. There was one game that Trey only had one rushing play.
Yes.
Like that's crazy to me, because that is such a skill set of his that has to be utilized. Now, he has to hook slide before taking the hits down the field, for sure. He has to learn how to do that. But, I say put the guy in his strengths and let him go.
Glenn, we're kind of against the clock here, as always. Seems to be the way. Love these conversations with you. Just a couple of minutes here, and I got to ask you a question. I mean, as we talked about it off the top, the long playing career, successful Hall of Famer at TSN. You still having fun?
I love it, Bubba. I really do. The traveling gets a little old, especially with, the different airlines and the delays and things like that. People that have gone on holidays this summer know what I'm talking about. That gets a little old. But beyond that, to be around the athletes, to get a chance to watch, after all these years, the Bo Levi Mitchell, Kenny Lawler connection at the start of a season, to watch 7 kick returns, touchdowns, and to be able to be part of those from the broadcast booth, to watch them, and the fan in me comes out. That's completely sincere, always. I just get so excited. In fact, there was one time Dustin and I were calling a play, and I had tried to predict, the old Tony Romo kind of prediction from the booth, where I said, this corner is allowing Trevor Harris to throw these 5-yard outs, but he's going to jump one very soon. And he did, and then dropped it. He should have had an interception for a touchdown, but he dropped it. And I jumped out of my broadcast booth, and I was like, there it is. I told you that was going to happen, which was totally unprofessional on my part, to just get kid-like and say, I knew that was going to happen. But I could have been a little more professional in my delivery, but that shows you that I'm having so much fun doing it. I love it. And I'm so impressed with these athletes, man. They put on a show week to week, and our game is so exciting and fun to watch. So thanks, Bubba, for the question, because I'm loving it.
Well, we love having you, and I love hearing you. And anyone that knows this game knows how good you are at calling those games, and how genuine you are about loving our game and the Canadian Football League. Appreciate you joining us on the Sportsline Podcast. Hopefully we can hook you up sometime a little bit later in the season, and maybe Kenny Lawler has got 20, maybe he's got 30 touchdown receptions. But we really appreciate your time, partner.
Thanks, Bubba. Anytime. You know that.
All right. Folks, that's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And as you just seen and heard, we love talking about the Canadian Football League. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, we always appreciate your comments. For the outstanding people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you real soon.